let's go ahead and kick this off. Really appreciate you guys coming on. I got Ed Ford, Alan Chaisson on. Both you guys served in the Marine Corps, did a little bit of time. Obviously, Alan is out there doing that fire rescue thing. You can tell by his background. And I'm just really glad to have you guys on. I got the book that you guys sent me, Postcards Through Hell. Looks really interesting. I've gotten to read a little bit into it. And it's funny, like, I always did not envy the people that were on the road all the time, in Iraq or Afghanistan. Like, such a dangerous job, IEDs everywhere. I want to get into the book and what you guys were doing there, but I'd like to start out by talking about each one of your individual careers a little bit. So, Ed, I guess if we could start with you, kind of tell us what your background is and what you did in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I was started off in the Marine Corps as infantry, moved into Recon, did about 14 years in Recon, between Force and Recon Battalion. And then after I got out, I did security contracting for about 8 years. I'd say the last 2 years is what the book entailed there, where I was in Afghanistan with the Pony Express. We were moving the mail and moving supplies for another client.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lot of good times in the Marine Corps. Met a lot of good dudes. Still in touch with a bunch of them.
What year did you join the Recon? What year did you join the Recon community?
Oh, geez, I joined the Marine Corps in '83. Got into Recon in '90. Yeah, and I was at French Creek at 2nd Force, right behind 2nd Anglico. And we did training platoons, stayed together. Then we went to jump school together. Then we deployed to Desert Storm. And matter of fact, we were with the platoon that took down the embassy in Kuwait City during Desert Storm.
Is this? Are you talking about? Okay.
Yeah. 40 hours. If you look at the actual when the Army took down the embassy in Kuwait City, they flew helicopters and everything. We were there 40 hours prior.
Nice.
And we linked up with the freedom fighters, the local Mujahideen in Kuwait City. They took us to the embassy. We climbed over the wall. We cleared the embassy, and we let everybody know that we were there. And then Jesus was like, General Boomer came by. He's like, look, you guys got to get out of here by tomorrow morning. So the next morning we packed up, we cleaned up the place because we didn't want to leave it a mess for whoever was going to come in. Drove out of there. The Army actually had a Black Hawk helicopter follow us out of the city, and they flew in their Chinooks, and they proceeded to blow open every door and window in the place. Yeah. So, here we are doing police call, picking up all the chem lights and stuff. And turns around, the Army just went ahead and trashed the place when they took it down.
Were you were with 2nd Recon at the time? Was
no, 2nd Force.
Okay. Were you guys the ones that were involved in Kafji?
No, that was Alpha Company 3rd Recon Battalion.
Okay.
Yeah, that was they had a team stuck on a roof.
Yep.
And so they just hit up there, and they just called in. They would just call in fires on the Iraqi positions.
Yeah, there was. So for those that may not know, too, like, there was a string of outposts along like the border that were Anglico, Recon, and SEAL teams were doing observations and calls for fire and stuff like that. And then the Iraqi armor punched through and tried to do a Blitzkrieg style raid or something, and made it to Kafji. And there were some guys trapped for a little bit, but they just held out. And obviously we know how that ended for the Iraqis. So yeah, man, what an interesting time. My dad was a Gulf War vet with the Army, and I remember being a kid and seeing all that, and that was probably, obviously probably a consideration for me when I joined the military, kind of seeing that whole thing. And it was, I guess as a kid, it gives you a reality check. you know, like dad's leaving for months at a time because you guys, I don't know about you guys specifically, but I know my dad and the Army guys that went were sent to Desert Storm way before it actually started. It was like almost a year, I think, or many months before, you know, for the build up and everything. So yeah, that's pretty good times. Were you also, Alan, were you also in Desert Storm, or what's your background?
No, I'm a former Navy Corpsman. I was a kind of a short timer. Went in 78, got out in 81, didn't really see anything or do anything. I actually attended a civilian program for paramedics as a corpsman, so I was one of the first guys to do that. And I became nationally registered as a paramedic. And then after I got out, I've just been a paramedic ever since. So I'm going on 42 years now.
Awesome. Was that kind of the standard then because we've all seen over the global war on terror, the increase and advancement of medical technology and stuff like that. But where did we start? You came in post Vietnam. So I'm sure there was still a lot of Vietnam vets running around. Like, what kind of medical training were you guys getting at the time? And now, you being in that field for 40 years, when you look back on it, do you think that was very adequate, what you were doing?
Oh yeah, it was above and beyond.
Nice.
I took additional courses. I was going to try to go IDT, and then I signed up for Fleet Marine Force. You know, we did things like suturing, wound debridement. We were allowed to prescribe plenty of Motrin.
Of course.
Kind of a deal, but I mean, you never really lose that stuff. Everything that I did thereafter just involved invasive techniques and stuff like that. It's a dynamic industry. It's always changing, new techniques, new technologies that are coming out that we have to stay abreast on. And I think that's one of the things that Ed likes about paramedics so much, is that our training is ongoing. We have to maintain our continuing education credits. We have to recertify.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I'm going through a credentialing process for the second time, just to be able to ride on the trucks here, because we've got new equipment, we've got new medications and new protocols, and you just have to stay abreast of that stuff all the time.
Yeah, it is definitely an ongoing thing. If you're in the medical field, you can't just sit on your laurels and, you know, expect everything to kind of work out. I mean, you know, one of the newer things that people are doing within the last 2 years that I saw in the military is they're really pushing this like direct transfusion kind of thing where guys are getting blood direct from another guy. I think the Rangers are kind of leading the charge on making that happen. Special operations are leading the charge, but it's like all these things that people may have mentioned, like, I wonder if that's possible, or we're like trying and validating. And then we've seen tons of stuff go to global war on terror and, you know, and, again, become validated. I did TCCC while I was in, which was awesome because it gave me a little bit more medical training. For those that don't know, that's tactical combat casualty care. You get to do like the live tissue training with the pig. You get to do more airway or breathing, like airway, like clearing obstructions and stuff like that. Just kind of more advanced medical stuff and training to get you ready for, you know, a combat environment, you know, and IEDs and stuff like that. When you guys were both serving, you know, this was post Vietnam. This is pre-global war on terror, obviously. This is pre-Gulf War. What was the vibe in the military? Because a lot of people look back at the 80s as like that was kind of a bad time for the military. Morale was low. Drug use was high. Was that kind of what was going on, or seem like it's overblown?
Carter was president. I think one of the benefits is that there was like an 11% increase in pay across the board. The Iran hostage situation was going on. The hostage crisis was happening. And you know, there was a failed rescue attempt there. And there were, you know, talks about deployment for recovery of that operation. You're right, though. Morale was low, a lot of drug use. And it's kind of hard to separate yourself, because when one guy makes a mistake like that, it gives everybody a black eye.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like one of those things. I remember Bill Cosby was he was going to speak at our 82nd hospital.
Hold on, you're getting all choppy there. The last thing we heard you say was that something about Cosby, and then it cut off.
Yeah, Bill Cosby was going to be a guest speaker at our 82nd Corps Ball.
Huh.
But I'm just saying it's kind of like talking about a black guy. He used to be a hospital corpsman himself, and look where he's at now.
I totally forgot that he was a corpsman back in the day.
Yeah.
No one ever brings up his naval service, which I'm sure Navy guys are probably okay with now since he's in all this trouble. But man, that's the first time I've heard of anybody talking about him being in the military in forever. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. So, you got to take the good with the bad, I would think. So, anyways, he never did show up.
Bummer.
We had another guest speaker, was a high-ranking military. I think it was one of our admirals, Admiral Lonigan, ended up showing up.
Did it feel like the command was, like I said, there was issues in the 80s. There's all this there's drug use and morale and all that stuff. And then I want to get Ed's opinion or his take on this also. But before, did it feel like the command was able to do anything about it? Was it a losing battle for them? Was there anything that really could have been done? Or was it just kind of one of those situations where you got to let it work itself out?
I went to basic at NTC in San Diego. And there was a lot of stuff that was going on. As far as the training and all these other elements that were at Balboa, but when I went to after A school, I went to Naval Air Station Alameda, and that was a whole different atmosphere. I basically filled out my dream sheet to be in that area because I knew a lot of family members that were still there.
Mm-hmm.
I had that to fall back on, and then of course I lived on barracks for about a year, and then when I asked for a BAQ. I ended up living in San Francisco, and Jesus Christ, that was a nightmare. So,
yeah. That's pretty wild. That's man, I don't think living. One of my corpsmen actually, when I was at First Anglico, lived. His family was in Orange County, and I always thought it would be kind of weird to be in the military, like right next to where you live. Because most people join the military and they're taken away from their hometown. They're at some base, and it's completely separate. But if you're like from right there next to the base, it would almost feel like you have one step still in the civilian side and one foot in the civilian side and 1 foot in the military side. You know what I'm saying?
Pretty cool. And then you could hold down another job if you got permission to do so. What I think I liked the most about it was the fact that I was familiar with the territory. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew people at Yerba Buena. I knew people at Treasure Island, and there was, a lot of things to do. Obviously. So, as far as, the morale, at Alameda was moderate, I guess you could say. There were some guys that were getting out. There were new guys coming in. You had that right seat, left seat transition that was going on. So, fresh faces and old protocols. So,
yeah, for sure. Ed, what was the infantry like in the 80s?
Oh man. Well, when I first got there, it was, pretty interesting because this is when they were first starting to crack down in 83, 84. They were first starting to crack down on the drug use. And I remember when I first got there were guys that like, man, I just popped on another piss test. Yeah, it was like his 12th piss test or something like that. And you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna be in the barracks for a few days. And it's like, and then it happened like division wide in Second Mardiv, all of a sudden, like the axe swung, and all these guys that were like, continually popping on piss tests, they were just like, all of a sudden they were getting discharged, they were getting the boot. And the funny thing was when they were in, and there was no threat of getting a discharge, a less than honorable discharge. They were all like, oh, yeah, they can kick me out. I don't care. And as soon as they were handed those papers, I was like, I don't believe they're doing this to me. And, because I remember, like, one day, you had a company formation. It was a full-on company. Like, then that Monday you came in, it was like 50% strength, and they were all gone. It was like, oh, my God.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, but not surprising. I mean, I think they
finally got tired of it, and they said, get rid of them. And I think the Marine Corps took a huge hit on numbers because, all those guys that were getting discharged en masse pretty much. But
that's a win, though. You know, that's a win for the Marine Corps, because then it shows that we're not going to accept this, and you're not going to have those kind of people try to work their way into the system.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like Lance Corporals and Corporals. I mean, you're talking staff NCOs. Like you a platoon sergeant there, then they come Monday morning when the axe was swung. That platoon, there's a corporal in charge of the platoon with a lieutenant, and it was like, wow. And,
taking them all out, man.
Yeah, yeah, he swung the axe hard. Yeah, because I was in 1-6 then, and I was under the impression that it was happening all through the division, and yeah, they and then after that they just started prosecuting all the drug cases and started discharge. Like your first time you get NJP, restriction, loss of pay. Second time you went to the brig. Third time, boom, you got discharged.
Was it mostly cannabis or other drugs as well?
Cannabis and cocaine back then.
Yeah, it was the 80s.
Yeah, yeah, cannabis and cocaine. And then, but by the 90s, I mean, you know, there was a system in place that they were able to clean it all up big time. They could apply it to your security clearance. Now, boom, you pop, you lose your security clearance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah, during the Global War on Terror, they always said there was a zero tolerance on drug use. But I will say that I remember when I first came in, I came in on multiple waivers because I got arrested for weed before I joined. So I had to had to get some waivers for that, and probably would not have been able to join had the war not been going on. But I do remember coming in and being a mechanic, because I came in open contract initially, and I was a mechanic for 3 years before I went to become a forward observer. And while I was at maintenance battalion, we had this kid there who I was like a Lance Corporal. I'd been in for, less than 2 years, but he was even newer. And I remember he showed up to the fleet and he was like super motivated and like all this stuff. And then he popped on a piss test. And I was like, oh shit, like he's in trouble. And he popped for coke. And we're like, man, that's that's like kind of a big deal. So we expected him to get kicked out. But at the time they needed people, I guess. So the company commander was like, hey man, you're going to get, 30 and 30 or whatever restriction, like, or 45, whatever the company level CO can give. And you're going to get the 45 days of restriction, and the rest of your sentence is going to be suspended as long as you don't do anything wrong. And then if you do anything else wrong, then you're going to get, processed out. And like within a week or two, in the restrictions barracks at Camp Lejeune, I never saw this at Pendleton when I was there, but at Camp Lejeune, when I was with maintenance battalion, the OD's hut in the back, there was actually like a squad bay, and that's where the restriction Marines slept. They didn't stay in their rooms, where now most of the time that's what they do. They just sleep in their own rooms. And this guy was in the restriction barracks in the squad bay, and there was a female in there also that had gotten in trouble, and they got caught messing around, and she was married. So this dude got in trouble again, and they're like, all right, dude, you're getting processed out now. You fucked up. And I'm like, man, this kid was like super motivated, all this stuff. And I'm like, you're an idiot, dude. And he came into work the next day or a couple days later and was like, hey, man, I got an issue. And I was like, what's up? And he goes, I think I have a lump on my testicle. And I'm like, what? Like, you need to go to medical, bro. Like, I don't know where you're talking to me. That's something for medical to go talk about. So he goes to medical, and they're like, hey, man, that could be testicular cancer. They check him out or whatever. That could be testicular cancer. This is like a 19-year-old kid, right? Send him to the Naval Hospital, and they're like, hey, man, we're going to have to remove the testicle. So they remove the testicle, fucking find out that it's not cancer, that it's just like some kind of lump or whatever is on it. I don't know what it was, a cyst or something. It wasn't cancer. And then the same day that they removed his testicle and found out he didn't have cancer, it was like the same day or the next day, he got his 10-day letter, meaning he had 10 days before he was separated. I was like, bro, don't do coke in the Marines. They're going to take your nuts, and then they're going to kick your ass out to the street with a felony record. Like, that's not... I was like, man, what a shitty turn of events for that guy. But...
probably going to make bank now that he, if he drank the water there.
Well,
lawsuit.
That lawsuit thing has been going around for a long time, but I think it only pertains to guys from your guys' era, from the 80s.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And I looked into it, and you have to be like symptomatic of like, there's like about a dozen different types of cancers and ailments, and you have to be symptomatic of at least like one of them in order to be able to file a claim. And if I went down the list, talked to my VA guy, and he's like, "Nope, you're not going to get any money." I was like, "Okay, no sweat then." I tried.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. If somebody's affected by something like that, kind of like in Pearl Harbor just recently, they just found out there was fuel in the water. They had fuel contaminating all the water and stuff. It's like, if you're affected by that, then you should definitely get compensated by the government. But there's also a lot of like grifters that are going to try to jump on that and try to just collect money for whatever. But it is what it is. Was there anything interesting going on in the 80s in the infantry, Ed? Did you guys have any missions you went on, or any kind of, what were deployments like?
My first deployment was like you were deploying to train pretty much. Outside of Beirut, there was nothing going on. Beirut was like the only thing, and that ended in 84. So pretty much it was deploying and training. Deployed to Okinawa my first time, and that was a fun one. Went to Oki, went to Korea. Oki and Korea.
Were you in that time? When you mentioned Beirut, so when you were coming in, had the bombing of Beirut already happened?
Yes. Yeah. Matter of fact, I was on duty the night that it was all over, starting to come in on the news that the bomb blast went off, and it dropped the barracks.
And what was the feeling within the military at the time, the Marine Corps specifically?
Well, I know 2-6 was on air alert at the time, and they sent out I think like a reinforced rifle company and a couple of reinforced rifle companies to Beirut to augment the security there. Other than that, though, I mean, that was the only thing that was going on. Other than that was, before that was Operation Eagle Claw, where they lost that CH-53, and that was the air wing at Cherry Point. They lost those guys, but that was in 80, I believe, or 79. Yeah. Other than that, up until Desert Storm, nothing was really happening. It was just training, and going over, getting into the 4th generation warfare, the maneuver warfare concept of bypassing the strengths, finding the gaps, getting into the rear areas, disrupting the enemy, using the OODA loop and things like that.
Yeah, I'd say that kind of is kind of what's going on right now, right? There's no real wars going on. I think everybody's kind of just training to be ready just in case kind of deal.
Yeah, and they're trying to update and the commandant's trying out this littoral regiment or littoral battalion concept for the Pacific to see how that's going to work, or if it's feasible.
Yeah. I think people can relate to how it was for you then, it's got to be tough to come in. Like, I came in, there was a war going on, so it wasn't like we didn't know things were going to be happening.
Yeah.
It's got to be tough to be in during the peacetime and just feel like you're training to train and like, what am I getting yelled at for here? Like, what are we doing? This is like, I've done this 50,000 times.
Yeah.
Is that how you guys felt? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, sometimes when you're out there digging that hole, you're like, God damn it, man. You're running through the mud again. All the buildings. You're like, because early 80s, it was still like all still pretty much scripted. And it wasn't until like the later 80s into the 90s that they started doing a lot more free play. Instead of the aggressors following a script, the aggressors were told, there they are, go fuck them up. And, the aggressors would find ways to infiltrate your lines and shit.
Yeah.
If you were an aggressor, you were finding ways to infiltrate the lines.
That's the way it should be, though.
Yeah, and when I first came in, there was the zero defect mentality.
Yeah.
And commanders were all afraid of that. So,
well, that's a pervasive, like, that's still an issue, and I hate it. And I hate it for not just like military commanders and stuff that look at their troops and think, they have that zero defect mentality, but also people that look at the military, and anytime someone messes up, they're like, well, I can't believe the military did that. And it's like, well, the military is a direct reflection of society, man. There's psychos in the military. There's angels in the military. There's murderers in the military. There's, the best of the best, the worst of the worst. There was a guy, I mean, you see heroes and stuff in combat and stuff like that, and that shows you some of the best. And then you hear about, like, when I was at Camp Lejeune, there was a guy that killed his roommate, I think, or someone else in the barracks with like an axe, like chopped his head off or some shit with an axe. And it was like, well, you got those kind of people too. Or the guy that worked in IPAC in the personnel area and had an affair with a chick there and got her pregnant, and he ended up killing her and trying to burn her body in his backyard. Those are the kind. Yeah, that all happened at Camp Lejeune as well. And that guy was on the run for a while. He actually got to Mexico, and he ended up turning himself in because I think that he said he was living in an avocado field for like 2 months. He was like kind of a chubby dude, and then when they caught him, he was like super skinny. He's basically been starving, just eating avocados in a field for like 2 months. But yeah, I mean, so the zero defect mentality is just not good because it's impossible. It's impossible to achieve that. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be some kind of issues. We should strive to lessen that, obviously. But what it really gets, and I guess what really bothers me about it is when you get mass punishment. Everyone gets in trouble because some idiot did something stupid. And it's like, dude, someone's always going to do something stupid. The mass punishment thing is good, I guess, in boot camp or whatever. But after a while, you got to let people be responsible for themselves. So I'm not a big fan of that whole zero defect mentality, and it's still a thing. I'd like to talk about a little bit about recon. You got into recon and stuff like that, and then I'd like to switch over to Alan and talk about some of the training and stuff he did through the fire departments, and because a lot of guys get out of the military and go through that kind of stuff too. So I think it'd be an interesting conversation, and then we can work our way into how you guys linked up and got into contracting and stuff. So what was the reconnaissance selection like when you went through it, and would you say 1990?
Yeah, 1990. I first went through took the Indoc, or I should say the screening, which was pretty much a PFT. You had to get 275 or above. Yeah. Then you had to pass the swim test, and then then the O course, and then after that, we got assigned to a training platoon. And back then, I mean, Force was building up another couple of platoons, so they needed the numbers, so they got authorization to run an in-house MOS producing training platoon. So what we did was, I was assigned to that training platoon, and I was, it was like 10 weeks long, I think, 10 weeks long, and it pretty much, the syllabus mirrored what was up at Fort Story, Virginia. It's just that, you had all the instructors right there at the company, and I think they did like 2 or 3 of those. But we started off with like about 30 guys. I think we graduated like about 15 or 16. And most of us stayed in that one platoon. But it was about 10 weeks of, what they did up at Fort Story, we were doing down in our camp Lejeune. Mm-hmm. We did the land nav, the comm, the amphib, the patrolling. We did the FTX, the final exercise. But because they were running it, they got to put their own spin on it too.
Yeah.
So, you had all these old cats that were there. They were like, this is what we're gonna make sure these guys really want to be here. And I mean, they were there to make you quit. That their mission was attrition. And it's like, all you had to do was not say I quit and just keep pushing and meet the standard. And I mean, we were all hurt and we'd all help each other out. And I think that was really great because it built that sense of camaraderie and teamwork. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were all miserable. I remember I had snuck in one MRE into my rucksack, and here we are, we hadn't eaten in like a day and a half. I bust open the MRE. It was a ham and chicken loaf, of course, one of the worst ones. But you know what? We split it up between 5 guys, and yeah, it was the best damn ham and chicken loaf I ever ate.
That shared misery really kind of like makes you appreciate the moment, right? You know, like when you look in the moment, it sucks. It's like, man, I'm miserable. Everything hurts. I'm cold. I'm wet. I'm tired. But then when you look back 5 years later, 5 months later, even, you know, whatever, and you look back and man, you wouldn't trade that for anything. Because I bet that sitting around sharing that meal with those dudes is, I mean, obviously it was a very special moment for you. You're bringing it up here, you know?
Oh, yeah. And, one guy, you know, the blisters on his feet were out of control. So we spread load his ruck between us. You know, we just stuff like that we would do. And he ended up making it through. We helped him out the whole way. But I mean, he never said I quit, because I remember earlier on in the course when I was having problems, he was there for me.
Yeah. So
that's
good, man. That's the team.
And it was like, well, I mean, dude, you had my back, I got your back. I mean, if you go, I go with you. So, and I mean, I think that was real. I think that was the biggest thing I ever got out of that course right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we all stayed together. We went to jump school together. Then from jump school, we stayed in as a platoon together. Then we deployed to Saudi Arabia again. Kind of funny, because when we got there, we were the boot platoon in the whole Force Recon group at, I think it was Camp 5. There was like 10 Force platoons there total. I think like 10. First Force had a whole bunch of platoons. And then Second Force, we brought over like 2 platoons. So I think there was like 8 or 10 platoons there total.
That's wild.
And what happened was we were the boot platoon. So missions were coming down, and it was like those OPs up on the border that you were talking about earlier. Our platoon was split between 2 of them. And a 6-man team in each one. And we had a headquarters team that would bounce between the 2. He'd spend a couple days over here and a couple days over there. And matter of fact, we were up there when the Iraqis were coming down. Because I can remember distinctly, we were watching shoot up all the. We were shooting they were shooting up all the flares. You can see like flares coming from one part of the L wall for us, flares coming from another part of the L wall for us, and it looks like they're signaling each other. And that's what we said, and that's what we thought. And then all of a sudden, nobody got any air, nobody could talk because they were jamming out the spectrum. Somebody was jamming it out. I don't know who. And then finally, the other team, Team 1, came barreling down with headquarters. They're like, oh, dude, they got tanks coming at our OP. We couldn't get air. So we're like, okay. And they had a 4-man Anglico team with them. Mm-hmm. And I think they were on a first or third. So what happened was we're pulling in the claymores and stuff that we had out there, and all of a sudden you could hear the Christie suspension. We knew that was signature of Warsaw Pact armor, the way it rattled like an AAV. But we knew AAVs were not that far north, so we're like, shit, that's probably BMPs, man. So we just pulled our shit in real quick, and then we made the decision. All right, we're going to E&E, and then for some reason that Anglico team was like, we're going to keep trying to get air. We're going to stop them here. We're like, our Lieutenant Knowles was like, good on you, sir. We're out. So we got out of there. And those guys were like missing for like 3 days. But they finally made their way back to friendly lines.
Good
and
times.
they never got air.
The Anglico dudes are going to love to hear that the Recon guys bounced out while they stayed there and kept fighting. Kept doing their thing.
No. I don't know how much fighting they did because they never got air. So
yeah, if you go back, I talked to Leo Lozano, who's on one of my earlier episodes. He was in the tower that got like overrun first. He was in the position like looked out the door, tank armor's pulling up on him, and they're like, oh shit, and they just happened to have like, I think they had started loading some gear because they thought something like that could happen, so they had started prepping their Humvee and stuff. And initially pulled back some And then, you'd have to go back and listen to the entire interview. Really good stuff. With Leo Lozano again, check that out. It's, the Gulf War is crazy because it was so short. It was so short-lived that many of the things that happened, like, Kafji and stuff like that, are kind of swept under the rug because it's just not like, it wasn't extended battles. You know what I'm saying? There was no like time for the media to get there and like overview everything. Like before, I mean, it was over within like a week. Obviously the buildup and stuff lasted months and everything like that, but the actual fighting was over in like a week. So unfortunately, a lot of like heroic stuff that happened or stuff like that kind of gets overshadowed because of everything that happened during Vietnam, global war on terror, and these other longer conflicts. But did you feel like your mission in, at the beginning was a traditional like reconnaissance mission?
Yeah, OP, observation post, observe and report. I mean, we're looking at the Warfare Force. I mean, you could hear them moving armor around in there at night. So we'd report on that. And then after we got chased off the border, we got a secondary mission. We were working with 1st Anglico and Special Forces attached to a Saudi brigade. Mm-hmm. What would happen, the Saudis were afraid of the dark, so they wouldn't go up on the border at night. So what would happen is our team would go up on the border at night, set up an OP, and would just, sit there, observe like we're supposed to, and then we call back. And if they needed any fire support or if we needed aircraft to fly over for anything, what would happen is we'd talk to Anglico. Anglico would coordinate it all and make it all happen. And then the ODA was there with the to keep the Saudis moving. So as soon as the sun came up, we would move back to the brigade headquarters, and the Saudis would move up on the border. Mm-hmm. And they'd almost always, though, you could see footprints from where Iraqi deserters were crossing the border and walking in, and then ODA would just send a vehicle after them. The Saudis would pick them up, and because they'd surrender to the Saudis. Yeah, so it was easier just to do it like that, because if a bunch of Americans showed up, you ran the risk of a shootout in your own rear area. Mm-hmm. It was a lot easier just to send the Saudis up there, gather them all up, drink some chai, load them up in a vehicle, and make them prisoners.
Yeah, so they don't want to surrender. They don't want to surrender to us dirty infidels. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, well they were also told that we would torture and kill them.
Oh no way! Well, I mean, I guess that's not a surprise.
Yeah, that was propaganda. That was part of the propaganda. I mean, hey, don't surrender to the Americans, especially the Marines. The Marines will torture you and kill you and find your families. It was shit hilarious. Like that they were told.
There's so many rumors about Marines and other nations and stuff like that. Like there was a big one in Iraq that I heard at the beginning of when I first joined, that people would say that when they got to Iraq, people were told that to join the Marines in America, you had to kill one of your family members. So all these Iraqis thought that was a thing, that all these Marines had killed someone in their family to be part of the organization. They were like, these guys are fucking crazy, but obviously that's not true. I like that you brought up how Anglico provided the air cover for that. That is a traditional Anglico mission. For those that aren't familiar with Anglico, Anglico is a Marine Corps unit, and its whole deal is to provide fire support, but not for Marines necessarily. Its main mission is to work with foreign our coalition partners and with like Army or other militaries that need fire support but don't have the ability to talk to Marine Corps aircraft and artillery. So they bring in that they're the link between the Army or foreign nations and air support, fire support from the Marine Corps side. They bring in the communications, they bring in the targeting specialists, all of that. So that's really cool that's, that just more history. That's what they've been doing the whole time. I wish not many people know about Anglico unless they work with them directly. So yeah, I'm glad this podcast has kind of put a lot of their exploits out there for others to see and hear about, because it's just it's a very small unit. Like I said, like 160 dudes in each one, and guys and girls. And I mean, they just have a huge impact that a lot of people don't even realize. Alan, when you said you did a short time, did the Navy Corpsman thing and stuff like that, decided to get out. Is that what you'd planned on? Were you like, hey, I'm only going to do one enlistment and get out? Or when you went in, were you open to doing a full career?
I had 3 years of NJROTC. So when I went in as an E3.
Nice.
I did plan on doing a little bit more time. I was on a 3x6, so I was supposed to do 3 years active, 3 years reserve. But I opted out of my reserve time, and I had some family issues in Canada. I'm Canadian, by the way. And so at the time I had dual citizenship, and I went home to work with my family, and I relinquished my U.S. citizenship. And after I came back to the United States, I had to reapply for a permanent resident alien card. But I went directly from there. I went to Phoenix, Arizona, because I had spent 8 years growing up there. I went to high school there and whatnot. But all my friends were either in jail, dead, or taking drugs, and it was just not the same atmosphere that I had left. So I ended up going to British Columbia and working with my family. After in Canada, they had a lot of logging industry is their main source of income and whatnot, but they were always on strike. You'd start to work and you'd work for like 3 months, and then there'd be a strike and you're drawing strike pay, and it was hard to keep a job or hard to get a job or whatever. Now, so I ended up coming back to the States, and I ended up moving to Texas, and I've been here ever since. So
that's crazy, going back and forth, back between Canada and the United States. Is that so? When you said you were a dual citizen, was one of your parents an American then?
No, my parents had arranged that when I was younger. So they made all the applications, so you automatically have dual citizenship. When I joined the military, but then when you go back, you kind of, the fact that you're in Canada or you're residing in Canada. So when I came back, now I had gone to law enforcement. I had went to the police academy, and at the time, the state didn't require U.S. citizenship. It was up to the agency that hired you on whether or not you had to be an American citizen. So I was able to get my peace officer commission, but that's changed since 9/11 because they came up with the USA Patriot Act. So if I wanted to get my law enforcement back, I would have to naturalize as an American citizen. So
what's that? I mean, as someone that's gone through that, what do you have? You probably have I don't know. What are your kind of thoughts on the current immigration process in the United States? Obviously, it's messed up. Obviously, it needs to be fixed. There's got to be some kind of improvements. As someone that's worked their way through the system, and it sounds like multiple ways, what kind of improvements do you think could be made? Sorry to throw a random one at you like that.
Well, there's an analogy that epidemiologists can find a cow in a pasture that's got spongiform encephalitis or mad cow disease, but they can't find 1.17 million people, illegal aliens in the United States. It's just weird that I think it's probably more politically driven as opposed, from the law enforcement perspective. We're definitely behind the curve, but I think if they make that more of a priority, and Trump was doing a pretty good job of it, and of course we got short-sighted on that as well with the new administration. But I'm Canadian, so I can't vote, and I don't give a shit, really. I'm with whatever happens. So,
having gone through the process, do you understand why some people try to just circumvent that, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm just going to come in illegally and go from there"? Was it a lengthy process? Was it a time-consuming and expensive process?
Here's the thing: when you do things by the book, it's really easy, and of course Canada's border is a little bit more lax than southern borders, but you follow the letter of law, you fill out your applications, you meet certain criteria to be eligible, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So at one point I had thought about naturalizing, because when I went to take my TCLOS state exam for law enforcement, I was thinking I was going to have to naturalize. And when they told me no, that was like $450 I was going to save. So I went ahead and just didn't do it. Right now, I wouldn't bother to do it now at all. I mean, I've been here for so long.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, I've got a Social Security card. I'm retired. I'm drawing benefits, whatnot. So, I have that history about being Canadian and sticking to my guns. So,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me and for people that are listening, I know that I don't really get into politics too much on here, and I try to keep the politics out of it. But one thing that I am kind of adamant about, because I'm right here in San Diego, I'm right by the border. I go down by the border quite a bit. Illegal immigration is just wrecking our communities in ways that people don't even realize, because, like you said, 1.2 million people last year. Where are they being housed? You know what I'm saying? Like, how is that affecting our housing market and stuff like that? I am pro-immigration. I think we need to put way more money into our immigration courts to speed up the process for people that are trying to do the right thing and come in the right way. And I also think we need to expedite people that are just trying to come in for financial reasons, to just deny those, get them out of the way, so that people that are actually in need, that are actually fleeing persecution, can get help. Because the people that say, hey, all these people are fleeing persecution and they need, they're all, what do they call them, refugees and this and that. When you just say when you water down that status, that refugee status, the people that actually need it are the ones that are being hurt there, because we're spending so much time on people that are only coming here to try to get a better job. And that, I'm sorry, is not a reason to immigrate to the U.S. illegally. I mean, that's just not one of the reasons that we allow refugees. That's not part of, financial reasons, isn't it? So I'm totally pro immigration. And I think we need to bring in bright people from all backgrounds to come in and, increase the standing and the ability of, the melting pot that is the United States of America. But I also think that people need to know who's coming into their country, and we should know who's coming in, and that people should be doing it the right way. That's just my personal opinion. I don't really put that out there very often, but like I said, I'm adamant about it because I'm right here by the border.
If we stop catering to them, I mean, providing all these benefits and whatever, now, I mean, there's really no incentive to work if we're going to just keep paying for all of these, I don't even know what to call it. I mean, you got medicine, education, housing, food. Everything's being provided for by the government. And where's the motivation to get your own job and do your own thing and try to,
and that's not everybody. Let's just put it out there. That's not everybody doing that, but that is definitely happening. And something I heard about actually earlier today, I read it. I'd never seen this before. Is that there's a lot of illegal immigrants that are claiming Native American benefits because they see themselves as like Native people because of the tribes and stuff in South America, Central and South America. So when they come here, a lot of them are putting on their paperwork or a lot of them are receiving Native American benefits because they're claiming it. It's such a crazy, I don't know, man. I don't want to get wrapped up into this, and I'm sure there's some people that dislike this conversation, so we can move on from it. But I just wanted to put that out there that I'm pro-immigration. I'm anti-illegal immigration. I think we should know who's coming in the country. There's been, I think, anywhere from 50 to 100 people from the FBI terror list that have been caught so far on the border. How many haven't been caught? Because there's been over 1 million people that are known gotaways, meaning we watched them come across, but we weren't able to do anything about it. So they're just wandering. And again, I'll bring it back to this, and I'll end it here. My last point is, what is this doing to the housing costs in the United States? People talk about the price of housing and stuff like that. What is adding over 1 million more people to the United States doing to different communities? And it's not all spread out evenly either. Many communities are impacted way more than others, and it's just not fair for those people that are having to deal with it. So anyways, I thought it would be an interesting take from you, since you've kind of gone through that process. As a firefighter, paramedic, doing that kind of gig, what would you recommend to people that are service members that are considering that as a job when they get out? What should they do to prep themselves to get into the fire, paramedic community when they transition out?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people don't realize they look at it as just like firefighter, paramedic, or whatever. And you could be just a firefighter without having any medical background at all, or you could be a paramedic that works at a fire service as a tiered service or third service. So you got lots of options. But in addition to that, there's so many other jobs. There's instructors and educators. There's arson investigators. There's search and rescue is a separate element now. Hazardous materials. There's so many things that you can specialize in, and that leads to other opportunities down the road. Like in law enforcement, there are guys that have gotten out that are working accident investigations for insurance companies, and they're making more money working for them guys than they did with the law enforcement agency. So, there's a lot of opportunities. Currently, where I work at right now, we have an academy, which if you were to put a price tag on it, it'd be about a $15,000 tuition fee. But we offer it for free if these guys agree to volunteer at our agency for 1 year. I mean, and when you come out of that academy, you're eligible to take the state exam and become a firefighter, and you can work anywhere in the state of Texas.
Nice.
And right, there are plenty of jobs for firefighters. So
I was about to ask, is there a lot of openings, or is it kind of a saturated field?
There are a lot of openings now. There's been things, in my area where, they don't have parity with law enforcement, and it's a little bit lower paid. And the further south you go, the less money you make, that kind of a deal. But there are plenty of jobs right now for firefighters, so time to get, to get into the game. With me, I could never get away from being a paramedic, even though I tried. So even when I was in the police academy, they found out that I was a paramedic, and they go, "Hey, man, you'd fit the bill for a tactical medic." And I ended up going on a SWAT team for like 10 years. And so that was something interesting, because I was going to be an arson investigator. I even went to arson school and whatnot. And that was the reason I went to the police academy. When I started contracting, I went over, wanted to be an international police liaison officer, which is what I had applied for. But when I was a paramedic, they say, well, you'd be better suited for PSD. So I ended up doing PSD, even though I didn't know anything about it. We did executive protection, but personal security detachments or details is a little bit of different kind of game, because you're working with a bunch of third country nationals, and there's a 10-man team element, and you're utilizing small unit tactics and whatnot. So it was like on the job training. You get there because your skill set is paramedicine. I've got a tactical medical background. I've got a prior military background, so I kind of fit the bill. But I didn't know shit about it. As a matter of fact, that's how I met Ed, because he was working for the Crucible, and he turned out my instructor. So my first year with the Crucible, and then my second year, he got hired by DynCorp to do the same type of. It was Crucible number 2, which was unarmed combat, IED recognition, tactical driving, stuff like that. Crucible 1 was foreign weapons and things of that nature. So. And we became friends after that. So,
starting with Ed, what drew you to doing this government contracting work?
Oh, geez. Right after OIF, we all got back, and a buddy of mine, he had just retired. He was working for the Crucible, as a matter of fact. And he sent out this mass email to everybody he knew and goes, "Hey, guys, if you want to make this kind of money, doing this kind of work, working with the same type of guys, send me your resume." So I gave him my resume, because I knew I was going to be retiring. And I was like, oh boy, I need to have a job lined up. And he came back with, I was talking to the Dyn recruiter, and I got hired on for WPPS, which is Worldwide Personal Protective Services. And pretty much I was at the embassy in Kabul. And anytime any of the embassy personnel wanted to go out to a site, like mostly USAID folks, we would escort them out there. And because the program itself was expanding so fast, I went from being a guy in the back seat as a security guy to, because of my Force Recon background, running the long range teams. Back in 2004, we went down to Kandahar, Ghazni, up to Kunduz, Mazar Sharif. And it was really interesting, but we were always moving the embassy personnel. Then after that, worked for Crucible for a couple of years. And then after that, I transitioned over. After Crucible lost the pretty much the contract went away, and DynCorp took the contract. Didn't like working for DynCorp anymore, so I went ahead and applied to SOC. With SOC, I went ahead and, that's where I started off in Iraq on the mobile team. Transitioned over to Afghanistan. My initial gig in Afghanistan with SOC, I was down at Camp Chapman, the very camp where that suicide bomber went off, took out most of the Jawbreaker team. Mm-hmm. I was a security guy for the construction going on down there, and I'd coordinate with the Blackwater guys, the Cobras. And interesting point here. I remember when I first got there, I was talking to the Cobra lead, and he was like, "God damn, man, I hate it when the client, 3 letters here, brings in their sources, because we're not allowed to search the sources." And I was like, looked at him, I was like, "You shitting me?" He goes, "No, man." I was like, "Dude, tell me you guys got that shit in writing." He's like, "Oh yeah. They put it in writing, so we don't touch them now." And after that bomb went off, after that suicide bomber took out the Jawbreaker team in, was that December 2009?
We were there. We were there in November. Remember, Ed? They wouldn't let us on the. We had to drop our load on the outside of the gate. And we guys with clearances that they would not let us out on the base. And
exactly.
And then a month later, they let some triple agent go in and took out the team.
Yeah, that was the one that took out the multiple CIA people, right?
Yeah.
And multiple, okay.
Yeah. And they tried to pin it on the Blackwater guys. And Blackwater came back with that memo saying, "Oh, no. You said we don't search them." And
that's crazy.
So they had to eat that. So, so the big boys had to eat that one.
Was it weird coming from active duty military, being part of the machine, to going into the contracting side and kind of seeing that side of the war? Because it's 2 different worlds, really, right?
Oh yeah, it is. It's a business side.
Yeah.
And like in the military, "Hey, I need this, this, and this, and this." All right, boom, they're going to feed it to you for mission success. In contracting, "Hey, I need this, 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 and this." Oh shoot, Al just went away again.
All right. So you were saying, so the question was, you were active duty military, gone to combat zone as an active duty military member. Now you're going as a contractor. Can you kind of show us both sides of the coin there? Like, what's it like to be a contractor compared to a military member?
All right, like in the military, you're getting prepped out for a mission. I mean, there's certain gear you need to go with. You're gonna have it. And they're going to spend the money. I mean, it's in the system. They're going to get it to you. Versus as a security contractor, it's up to the companies, because they're all there for their bottom line. Mm-hmm. It can be very lucrative. I mean, I remember I was making like, $15,000 a month. And that's the bottom end of the pay spectrum. I mean, that should give you an idea of the amount of money that's involved with war that you can make.
I know I know a lot of contractors are getting like $600 or $700 a day, tax free.
Yeah, especially if you're working for the OGA side. I wouldn't say tax free. If you play it out right, you can usually get like the first 90 to 100 grand tax free.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's what you find out real quick, is that it is a business.
So are you under the support of the military infrastructure at all? Like, who's feeding you? Who's housing you? Obviously, you can't live out in town.
That's going to come out down to the letters of authorization. Most of the time, you're living on secure compounds that the company is going to provide for you. Unless you're like a static site supervisor, like at Fob Hadrian. That was like my very last gig I did, because I had to quit running the roads. Then you're on then you fall in under the military infrastructure. They house you, they feed you, medical. You need to fly out, they're going to fly you out. You fall under all that, but sometimes it just depended on the contract. Like with if you're working whips, you're falling under the State Department, so you fall under that umbrella there. Not everything that they can provide for you. under the mail contract that we for the Pony Express, we fell under the military. However, what happened was there's certain things that they will and will not do for you. They didn't house us or billet us, so maybe on like a temporary basis, like we do a drop at a site, and we had to spend the night just to rest up before we can get out of there the next day. They had no problems with that. It's like we just couldn't live there for like 6 months.
Yeah.
We had a compound to live on.
Yeah, for sure. Alan, when it came to the medical side of it, how did like medevacs and stuff work? Did you guys have contract medevacs, or was there you guys could work with the U.S. medevacs and stuff like that?
Well, in Iraq, it was all proximity driven, and we were on the other side of the Tigris River, and the cache, in the green zone was right across the Third ID Bridge. So we basically drove our guys over there. We handled our own evacs. Never really needed it. In Afghanistan, we're doing convoy operations. We're all over the country. Mm-hmm. We did have a mutual aid agreement with Guardian Medical, which was out of Kia, but I don't know why that never really materialized, and I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that it was a contract issue or it was a monetary issue, but we never were able to use their services. And so if we were lucky enough to get a medevac, it would either be an incident that happened that the military was in close proximity to that we could make contact with. I know Ed used them on a couple of occasions. We never, my team, we never had access to medevac services. At CAF, there was a Canadian element there. Actually, I was Canadian. I'm going to go play that card, and I met one of the lieutenant colonels there, and they've got a wider response capability. So it kind of gave us a little bit of protection, but nothing really happened at the time. So we never utilized their services either.
That's kind of wild that you guys are kind of, see, as a person in the military, I thought the contractors had their own comms to be able to call in medevacs if they needed to, like military medevacs. I thought, did you guys have an ability to use any kind of fire support, or was it only your fighting was only organic weapons?
Organic weapons.
Yeah. The biggest part, or the biggest challenge, I think, was one, we had to establish these relationships. A lot of times, we made our own recon elements. Mm-hmm. Out to these sites, we would basically do an advance on that site and create forms that gave us all their communications capabilities, TACSATs, MBITers, SVoIP, cell phones, the whole 9 yards. What was their medical capabilities? What could they handle? How many docs they had on board? Mm-hmm. How many, did they have medevac capability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we basically built that program, and we incorporated it into the operations so that if something did go wrong, we could at least try to make contact. But for the most part, it was dealing with our own tactical operations center, and then they would try to do what they could to help us out. And for the most part, it would be QRF. We'd have our own QRF team.
That's crazy. See, I thought it was way more integrated, considering the work that's being done by contractors. Everyone's doing a different job as a contractor, but you got guys guarding, HVT, or not HVTs, not high value, but VIPs, excuse me, guarding VIPs. You got guys like you guys were running convoys to bring supplies, and this isn't. I mean, you're supplying gear, mail. Like in your book here, you're talking about supplying gear, mail, and classified material to different outposts, but you're kind of doing it on your own without the support of the military. I don't know. To me, it's just kind of crazy that it's not more integrated. And I know that's kind of the risk of going and being a contractor, and that's why it pays so much, is because you're accepting more risk than you would as a service member. But I don't know. I just thought the logistics of it was kind of more integrated.
Yeah,
all that training comes into hand too, because if we weren't running missions, we were training. If we're not training, we're working out. We were doing all kinds of stuff to maintain the status quo. But I got a lot from Ed when he trained me. It wasn't picking up foreign weapons, escape and evade. It's almost like SEER training, a lot of weapons training, a lot of tactics. And then there was the minuscule stuff like setting up tows and changing flat tires and getting off the deck, cross-decking and whatever not. And we did it so often that we were actually really good at it. So it minimized our exposure. But there were a lot of times, man, when we were getting ambushed or getting hit that, we had to self-sustain for at least 72 hours. And then you're responsible for that entire team as a medic. Ed's responsible for that entire team as a team leader. So, there's a lot of pressure on guys like that to have to, keep things going. And the other benefit, I think, was the fact that we could move a lot faster than military convoys. We had the Ford F-550s that they're at 300 horsepower, but of course the Achilles heel is flat bottom chassis, and it's a catastrophic takedown if we did get it. So, it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back,
Yeah. What kind of weapons were you guys carrying? What was your personal weapons, and what did you have on your up guns?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, the up guns were PKM machine guns, and mostly the LN gun, the local Afghans would man those. We had M4s and Glocks.
Mm-hmm.
We had a 240 Bravo at one point. I remember. Yeah. But I think that was a weapons authorization issue with ITAR and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So problems on the corporate side about arming authority and security operational license and vehicle licenses. And, they're paying out the ass on expedition fees. And then it goes back to that business side of war that Ed's referring to. It was about extortion and what they call expediting,
Yeah.
We ran on missions. We carried like 10 grand in cash, get out of jail cards, get past checkpoints, bribe your way out of trouble. There, a lot of times somebody crash into you just so that they can get money out of you.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All the
if there was a vehicle accident and you were in the area, I mean, it was like it's your fault. Pay me and if the police were involved, pay me $3,000, or you go to jail. And you're like, oh, damn. I remember one time we had a little minor fender bender on the way to J-Bad, and this driver was like, "You must give me $200." I was like, "Oh, really?" I told the Terp, "All right, tell him I'm going to give him $200, but I'm going to do $200 worth of damage to his car." And I picked up a brick and I looked right at his windshield, and I was like, "That's where I'm going to start, buddy." And we agreed on $20.
Hey, negotiations, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
gotta be able to negotiate.
You have to negotiate from a position of power.
Yeah, man.
I wouldn't call it a financial QRF, but it was a mechanism in where you try to settle this before A&P got there.
Yeah.
If there was an accident, you just offered up the money. So we paid some guy $400 just for a flat tire one time because he got it by crashing into our vehicle. It was like, okay, here's $400. Let's just get off the X. I call that the X, even though it's not a combat related type of a scenario. But once the A&P shows up, it goes from 400 to 4,000.
Yeah, big time. I remember headquarters team was doing a run to Gardez on a mail run, and some guy, that going up the Terra Pass, it's all windy and stuff. Some guy came around there, must have doing about 50 miles an hour, hit Rector's gun truck and knocked the back axle out of line. So we had to set him up in a tow. Now the guy is sitting there yelling and screaming, saying, "Oh no, you owe me money. You hit me." We're like, "No, we didn't." I actually had to sit here, tuck my M4 under my arm, and just muzzle punch him right to the chest just to shut him up. I went wham, and he just dropped to his knees. And I was just like, all right. Rector's like, let's go. We got to go. So we got out of there real quick. We had to tow him back. And, oh, yeah.
Was he riding in the vehicle with you guys? He was in your vehicles then since you towed him?
Oh, Rector? No. He was in his vehicle.
Oh, you towed him back. Oh,
yeah,
I thought you meant the
back.
Afghan. I was
we towed him to Gardez.
Yeah, no.
Then when we were at Gardez, we had to make a few phone calls to get a flatbed truck to Gardez, then a crane to lift the gun truck onto the flatbed truck, cinch it down, and then that's how we convoyed back. That second gun truck was on on a flatbed truck.
Nice.
The gunners were up in that truck, and we just convoyed back. Once we got to Shank, we linked up with another team, and they QRF'd for us. And we just, so we had the added security, and we just kept pushing.
I was always, when I went to Afghanistan, the 2 times I went, I flew in a helicopter to whatever area, and then I was generally in that area the whole time, either Marja in 2011 or Sangin in 2013. So I didn't get to see much outside of those immediate areas. For you guys traveling all over the place, doing these deliveries and stuff, what was the most dangerous area do you think it was for you guys to go?
Oh, Jesus. Once the fighting season kicked off.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had routes.
Yeah.
The J-Bad run was one route. We had Gardez, which was another. Earlier on, we were doing long hauls all the way down to Kandahar, and there's just...
And Herat.
Yeah. Ghazni.
Ghazni was always hot. Got that Ghazni water area was always very hot.
There's a place on that map that I actually have a photograph of the map that we produced that didn't have medevac capability either. So you're either going to push forward or deal with the situation, on your own. Logar province was another hotbed. So.
Yep. Oh yeah, Logar. Yeah. Right by that one, I forget the name of that one town, but you could always sit down there, look at that one tree line across the open paddies, and you're just like, oh man, if it's going to hit, they're going to hit us right from there.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, that's just like, I kind of wish I would have been able to, when I was an Afghan advisor, we got to move around a little bit more because we were going to all the different Tulai, Afghan company positions and stuff and checking them out. But I didn't get to see as much of the country as I would have liked. What did you think about the actual Afghan countryside? A lot of the areas are really beautiful.
Oh yeah. Like the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah.
It's like in Oregon.
I'm mesmerized by the beauty, and I always wondered why such a beautiful place was kind of nasty with the war side of it.
Oh, deadly.
They had as well, it's just like it's too bad that they can't cultivate all that. When I say cultivate, I'm not talking about opium, but natural gas and oil and iron ore and all kinds of stuff. You could just see that in the mountains, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
it's that whole tribal mentality that's you might be good to go up here, but then you travel down south a little bit, boom, it's a whole different world, a whole different game, and you have to start over from step one, square one, to reestablish everything to get that trust. It's very unique, pretty wild, and we just weren't. It's that tribal mentality that we couldn't get past. I mean.
Well, they couldn't get past, really.
Yeah.
Not really us so much. I think it was just, like you're saying, the corruption. The corruption, it was just outrageous. I mean, you've mentioned it already, having to pay off even the A&P and stuff. What was your interactions with, we could start with Jeff, Alan. I said Jeff. What were your guys' interactions with, the local populace? Did they see you guys as also part of the military, or did they understand that you guys aren't the same thing?
I'm pretty sure they knew that we were probably contractors, and we never really portrayed ourselves as anything other than there's like ODA guys that might dress in civilian clothing and or wear tribal garb and stuff like that. We never really tried to conceal who we were.
No,
but. I remember having this conversation earlier on about some of the guys we worked with where we're not out there to do a hearts and minds kind of a campaign, but we don't want to make any trouble either. And every once in a while we have a guy, like a cowboy attitude on the team that would bring, it's like a black eye to the unit, They would they would do things that caused retribution further down the road, and we didn't tolerate that stuff. So
No.
there was a guy who was an asshole. He didn't matter how good he could shoot or how good of an operator he was. If he had an aggressive mindset, he didn't last long. And we weeded those guys out.
Yeah, I could see that being an issue. When guys are given the opportunity, they're like, hey, you can go back over to a war zone, not in the military, so it's not as, strict, and you're going to get a lot of money for it. I could see how that could draw some of the wrong kind of people,
There were a lot of times that we did, not intentionally, but we did humanitarian efforts. We took care of people whenever we could. We treated them, really well in terms of respect and whatnot. Of course, if somebody got in your face, you had to, bow up a little bit so that they know that you're not messing around, that they understand that we're there to defend ourselves. We're not there to pick a fight, but if a fight starts, we're going to certainly protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But when it came to the Taliban, that was a whole different ballgame, because sometimes it got to the point that they were monitoring our activities. So, they even put out a bounty on our heads, just based on the success of our missions. And at first, the military was like a primary target, and we were maybe secondary targets because we were, a little bit softer than the military. But as we got better and better and better, we became more of a primary target, not just a target of opportunity. So there were those things to consider as well. And it wasn't just being on the road. It would be wherever we were billeting at, wherever we were going to eat a meal, wherever we went shopping. And it's kind of weird. It's not a coincidence that all this shit starts blowing up, because these are places that we're going to. And, and of course, Intel told us, that they got their eye on you,
Yeah. I remember when I got my new ATL, Chris Vail, my first initial in-brief with him, I was talking to him about the Taliban. I told him, look, this isn't like Iraq. I mean, Iraq, they just pop an IED, a few rounds, and then get out of there. Taliban, they would stay and fight. I mean, these guys wanted to fight you. And, they were like, and I remember Chris Vail looked at me, he goes, a worthy adversary. I was like, dude, be careful of what you wish for, man. And he ended up being one of the guys we ended up losing.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So.
Damn it, man. That's like one of those things you hear someone say something like that, and then that happens. Like, fuck, man.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, they weren't afraid of they weren't afraid of a fight, the Taliban. So.
I think a lot of times we would see them take pot shots and stuff like that and kind of bleed back through a tree line or whatever and ditch their weapons in a field. A handful of times they would stand and fight. And it was like, when they did, it was, they were ready. I don't know. They were just ready to hang out and throw some lead for a little bit,
Yeah. If you're not fighting the Taliban, then you're fighting maybe a drug warlord or some other criminal element, it all kind of bleeds back into it. Like, bandits on the road, if they think you're an easy target, they're going to try to get what they can out of you. But a lot of times when you engage them, they don't stick around. They take off, and that's kind of basically the difference. And then every once in a while you might get some sniper fire, but I think the complex attack is probably the worst kind of a thing, because these guys have these TTPs that, and they're hardened motherfuckers, man. These guys fight in, austere environments and ungodly terrain and really, really bad situations. And so they're hardened guys, and that makes for a hell of a firefight when you get caught up in one,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. They, it was interesting. I mean, many people may not know, especially people that were never over there, but there's a lot of different factions. There's like the local Taliban guys. There's the Taliban guys that come in from Pakistan and stuff that are like the pros, if you will. And then you have your like local gangs and drug dudes and stuff like that. So there's even like, not only are they fighting us, but sometimes you see the infighting amongst themselves. I mean, I remember when I was in Sangin, we were catching intercepts that the local fighters were upset at the fighters coming over from Pakistan because they were forcing their way into people's homes. They're like, you have to put us up, you have to give us food, you have to do this and that. And the local dudes were like, F this, dude. We don't want these dudes in our houses, and we don't want to feed them. You know, we're trying to feed ourselves and maintain our own fight. And they would get it. Oh no, you're good. And they would get in the local and the local Taliban and the guys coming over from Pakistan and stuff would get into their own firefights and stuff. You know, they'd be fighting amongst themselves because of disagreements there. It was just, I don't know. It's such a weird environment, man.
And it is weird because I mean, I remember Buddha. The last gig he was on over there, he was down in Kandahar working with the USAID, a low pro gig, and the Taliban hit the USAID house with a VBIED, and apparently this was not sanctioned by the Taliban, and so the Taliban leadership, I mean, these are the heavy hitters from the Taliban are coming up to the USAID headquarters, tears in their eyes, begging for forgiveness, because they knew that the USAID was providing jobs for the locals, which was probably a lot of their fighters. Mm-hmm. And they would pay they would pay the workers who were fighters, then the fighters would pay the warlords. So the warlords didn't want to lose out on that. They're like, look, we know who did it, we know who ordered it. We're gonna go ahead and handle this in house. And sure than shit, like about a week later, there was like about a half dozen Taliban found in a ditch, and nobody knows who killed them.
Man, that's like the Taliban just killed the ISIS guy that planned the attack on Kabul, on HKIA.
Yeah, on Abbey Gate.
Yeah, and it's like, because they were like, hey, that wasn't supposed to happen. You know, from what I've heard, you know, we had a tacit agreement with the Taliban, like, look, we're evacuating people. We're not trying to kill you guys. Don't try to kill us. You know, we're just trying to get out of here kind of deal. And then ISIS came in with their suicide bomber, kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing and made them look bad, which they didn't want. I don't know. It's just such a weird place, man.
I got a good one for you. Fob Gardez is built around a cemetery. And these are martyred fighters and stuff like that. And I remember somebody dropping some IDF on the indirect fire on that base, and those guys ended up being beheaded by the Taliban a couple years ago. They desecrated these graves, and it was just like, you have to go back to that type of history. But I think the biggest thing that really freaked me out were proxy shooters. So you got guys that you're working with, SOC A does their own vetting and whatnot, but there's times when the Taliban would either kidnap or threaten to harm family members and stuff. And now you could never leave your guard down. I mean, obviously when you're in a foreign country, that you don't do that, but we had to have eyes in the back of our heads, because we never knew at any point one of these guys on your own team is going to turn around and shoot you because they're holding their family hostage. Mm-hmm. And so that was another thing, because it was the unpredictability.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I went in as an advisor in 2013, a lot of our advisor training was green on blue, like how to counter. We would practice drawing a pistol and shooting from sitting position from a desk, basically. We would do these different things, and we would get these briefs about, hey, look out for this symbology, look out for this, this is what we've seen on different suicide attacks or whatever. But yeah, there's always that weird feeling in the back of your mind that you can never fully trust some of the guys. Some of the guys you were like, okay, this dude's legit, this is whatever. Some of the guys, though, I remember we got into a pretty good fight in Sangin at FOB, I can't remember it now. It was a patrol base, actually. It was one of the Afghan patrol bases. And the Afghan company their company commander had been killed, and like 6 of their guys had been killed. And later on, the Afghans found the company commander's body was like desecrated and all that stuff. But during this fight, the Afghans are like, hey, you guys need to help us. Like, we're here with them. They're like, get air support, get something here. And we're trying to do what we can as a small advisor team. And also while they're trying to get a kind of a rescue force together to push out and try to help these guys. And then there was a guy, I was on a rooftop with a few guys, and there was an Afghan soldier up there, and he was we're taking contact from this direction, which was the north, and he's looking to the south, that there's a compound, and he's like, hey, there's Taliban in that compound, and we're like, where? And he points it out, and we're like, we haven't seen anybody go in or out of this compound. And he was like, hey, shoot grenades at this compound, there's Taliban in there. And we're like, we're not going to shoot grenades at a compound that we don't even know who's in it. And he got all pissed, and he told our interpreter, he's like, hey, if you guys don't want to help, we'll kill you and we'll kill the Americans. And the interpreter turned around and told us that. Like, this is what this dude just said. And we're like, oh, shit. Hey, Zap, who's the interpreter, we're like, here's a pistol. Like, here's a pistol for you. Keep an eye on that fucking guy. And we're going to keep dealing with what's actually going on over here. And after it all kind of settled down and everything, the guy apologized. He's like, sorry for saying that. I shouldn't have said that. But it was like, dude, what the fuck? Oh, in the building he was talking about that he wanted us to shoot 203s at, we watched it for a little bit, and a bunch of women and kids came out of it. There was no fighters in there. There was nothing. And it was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing, man? But that kind of situation, or someone saying something like that, we think about that as an advisor when you're in a building and it's all Afghans. It's like 2 Americans and like 20 Afghans. That's the kind of shit that goes through your head. You're like, man, I'm in kind of this could be a spicy situation real quick. And we had code words that we would use over the radio if we needed someone, if we felt uncomfortable, we needed someone to come in just to add more to us. Or, hey, we had another code word that was like, shit's going down, come in with your guns up kind of deal. And I don't know, you just kind of had to prep for that. Were you guys, luckily we never had an attack like that. We never had an insider attack or anything on our team. Lots of teams did, lots of MARSOC teams. A lot of guys lost dudes, or a lot of guys were killed because of these insider threats. Did an attack ever take place with you guys, or was it always just that looming threat that never really actually happened?
That looming threat, I think the closest that ever came was that one gunner that one gunner that was on Bedford's team. He was from the Logar province, and apparently he had family members in the Taliban. And what he would do was, on the run, we put him on the Logar run, and he would get on the phone and say, hey, I'm in the 3rd vehicle. So the first 2 vehicles would get lit up, but nothing would happen with the 3rd vehicle. Then so they figured that out really quick. So the next time Bedford ran to Logar, they waited. They let him make his phone call. They rolled out. He stopped the convoy, took that guy out of the 3rd gun truck, searched him down, took his cell phone from him real quick, put him up in like the 1st gun truck, and then continued on with the mission. And what happened was they got lit up again, but this time the Afghan from Logar province, he's up in the lead gun truck now taking rounds. And now when he gets back, he's like, oh, I can't believe it. They switched me up at the last minute, took my cell phone from me. You guys were shooting at me. We did that. Bedford kept on doing that with him. And sure than shit, the guy just ended up quitting.
I'm surprised you guys would keep someone like that around. I mean, could you not just fire him?
Well, because it was no real hard proof, but it was like it wasn't like they actually caught him and they heard him on the phone giving up stuff. Sometimes he would just
just too many coincidences, huh?
Yeah, too many coincidences. But they kept on moving him up to the truck, out of his truck into the another truck, and finally he just got sick and tired of it and said, "I'm out."
Yeah, I'm about to get myself killed. I can't be doing
that. Yeah, my cousins are gonna kill me.
Yeah, man, that's pretty wild. What was when it came to the end, when you saw the war ending and you saw that chaos that was the withdrawal, as much as the administration and stuff want to play it off that it wasn't, the chaos that was the withdrawal, people falling off planes and just a craziness. Were you surprised by it? After being in country and working with Afghans and seeing how the corruption and stuff, was that a surprise that it fell so quickly?
I remember I remember when I left in December 2012, ran into a buddy of mine who was an RSO at the embassy, had lunch with him, talking to a bunch of his RSO buddies, and I was like, yeah, man, after we leave here, 6 months, the Taliban's going to be back in control. They looked at me, laughed, and said, boy, aren't you the optimist? It's going to be more like 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And more like 3 weeks, actually. So we all saw it coming. However, what surprised me was that there was no plan. I mean, if there was a plan, it was never updated. And you can't sit down here and blame the previous administration because, Brandon was up there in that Oval Office for 7 months. He had every opportunity to go down that plan and adjust it line by line on a weekly basis. And, but there was no plan. I mean, everything was, you even shut down Bagram and I couldn't believe that.
Nobody can. Everybody looks at that and goes, why did we choose to evacuate out of the middle of a city with 1 million people in it rather than an air base out by itself that's secure?
And here's the thing about that, going from Bagram, the way that ECP is set up, I mean, we've both been in and out of Bagram multiple times. Even if a suicide bomber got in there and he lit off, you wouldn't have had 13 dead. You would have had like maybe 1 or 2 dead and maybe 13 wounded.
Yeah, they had handoff distance.
Yeah, and but it just wasn't handled properly. It wasn't from the White House and the Pentagon. They handled it poorly.
And the State Department. Let's not forget the State Department.
Yeah, the State Department too. I mean, they should have been getting our guys out, our troops out of there. Like,
I did an interview, and I'll look it up while I'm talking to you guys. I did an interview with a gentleman who was also a contractor, and he was at the State Department, at the embassy in Kabul during the evac, and he talked about showing up like a few weeks before the whole evacuation began. He's like, yeah, it didn't feel like anything was happening, like they were planning to evacuate or anything. He was like, it was business as usual. Memos were being sent to be signed, and this wall was being painted and maintenance was being done by maintenance guys. And he's like, all the way up until the last second, and then it was like someone caught their hair on fire. He goes, now we're running around smashing shit with sledgehammers, smashing classified material and stuff. And he's like, when I showed up, I know all this stuff is kind of brewing because I just came from the States and I'm watching the news and stuff. He goes, but then I get to Afghanistan and it feels like a completely different situation. Like nothing is even happening and no one's even planning for this inevitable withdrawal. And then all of a sudden it was just chaos out of nowhere. And I was like, man, that's just kind of mind blowing that, again, we knew it was coming. It's not like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, but
there was a date.
Yeah, there was a date, but nobody wanted a plan for it until until people started falling off of airplanes, I guess.
Yeah, it was definitely no good, man. It was tough to see.
Our biggest concern is that we still had guys in country. There were, what's not, I'll go back to the book and then segue into the point I'm trying to make was that the Postcards to Hell is written from 2009 to 2012. Mm-hmm. That contract lasted up until December 24th of 2016. So there were a lot of guys, including our interpreters, that were still in country. Once the contract was done, these guys stayed working for other companies. And so that was our biggest concern during the evacuation was what's going on with these guys? Where are they at? Are they able to communicate their situation? Do they need help? Are we going to have to make some kind of a rescue attempt or something, to help them out in any way that we could? So that was our biggest concern that we had talked about, because we got like a group on Facebook that's Pony Express members, and everybody kind of chimed in on, hey, check in. Where you at? Are you okay? What's going on? Do you have internet access? Do you have phone access? Whatever the case may be. So we were kind of watching each other's backs, but nothing really ever materialized. But that was our biggest concern right there.
Yeah. And for those that I just looked it up, that was episode 122, Tom Gathright. I did a interview. He was like I said, he was a private military contractor. He was a Marine infantryman turned naval officer turned private military contractor. And he was at the Kabul embassy during the evac. And he kind of gives a, unvarnished perspective of what he saw of the chaos that ensued. So I actually made a clip out of that specific part of the interview too, so people can check that out on the YouTube channel. It's just, having been in Sangin, and when we were the last advisor team, we left in the summer of 13, and within, I think it was less than a year or something like that, I don't remember, the bazaar and Sangin and shit was all just deserted. The Taliban had come back in and taken over. I think ISIS had kind of come in and taken over too. I think that was back when ISIS was still flaring up a little bit. And there was I remember one of my buddies that was on my advisor team sent me a YouTube video that was a video of the bazaar. And it was just sad looking, because when we were going through, it was people everywhere, cars everywhere. People are selling stuff, buying stuff, women, kids, everybody out buying. And it was an economic hub in the middle of Sangin. And then I get this video and it's tumbleweed going through, burned out buildings, shit blown up. And it's just, to me, I saw that and I was like, well, that's kind of symbolic of the entire country. That's what's going to happen once we completely pull out. So I wasn't surprised when it happened. I wasn't surprised about how fast it happened. I was kind of surprised by the amount of people that were willfully ignorant to the situation, because many people that worked with the Afghans and went over there, we saw the corruption. We saw through not just at the lower levels, but through the entire system. When we get mad at the Afghans for not standing up and fighting for their country, but they were also not being fed or armed or paid, and many thousands of Afghan soldiers died all the way up until the end of the war, trying to fight for their country. And by the end, there was just too much corruption and stuff, and it was kind of sad to see it. And at the same time, it was well, you get what you asked for. You didn't want us to be here. You don't want us to be here to help you out. So now you're going to live under the Taliban rule, and that's going to be a completely different life than what you could have had. You saw I kind of have hope that maybe it'll change at some point, because we were in Afghanistan for so long. There's a generation of Afghans that kind of grew up seeing what could be, girls going to school, people becoming educated, job, infrastructure being improved. The Taliban didn't want us to pave 611 through Sangin, because then we could eventually fix Kajaki Dam and then have a consistent source of power through Helmand Province. Well, they didn't want that. They wanted the chaos. So they're just killing contractors that are trying to fix the dam, killing contractors that are trying to fix the roads. And it's just if the people aren't willing to stand up and push back and go, we reject that. And we may not necessarily want the American way, but we definitely don't want that way. Then it is what it is. I feel for them, but it's what can we do? We spent 20 years there.
They're killing contractors trying to deliver the mail too.
Yeah, contractors. People don't realize there's a lot of U.S. contractors that were killed overseas. And hey, guys knew what they're signing up for, right? Guys knew they're getting into a dangerous contract or getting into it, but that doesn't that doesn't take away from the fact that they were killed doing something, I don't know. It was a tough go for contractors, and a lot of contractors got a bad name after the whole Blackwater, those guys blew up and became the poster children for private military contractors in a bad way. I don't know. Did you guys feel any kind of effects from that when people started pushing back against companies like Blackwater and stuff? What was the response to you guys?
Yeah, well, this just prior to the SOFA agreement in Iraq, we had to change our TTPs. Now we had to equip vehicles with cameras. We had to go over the rules for the use of escalation force, as opposed to the military uses the ROW, we use the RUF kind of a deal. Eventually, they took our bumper guards off. They removed all our anything that had the term grenade in it, so smoke grenades, flashbangs, all that stuff, that was gone. They limited, we went from 12 mags to 3 mags.
What?
Yeah.
They limited the amount of magazines you could carry?
Yep.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and then once the military withdrew from Iraq, basically as a contractor, you're on your own. And I did something outside the norm. I ended up training the Scorpions, which is a 200-man SWAT team in combat lifesaver. I did a trainer program for them because I needed some kind of a mutual aid agreement that could help us out when we were in Al-Hila. And, I did what I could, hoping that in good faith that they would provide some kind of protection or some kind of response to situations that would involve attacks on us as individuals. So.
Mm-hmm. When you guys are in country and you have these contracts going on, can you quit at any time? Can you be like, yeah, I'm done with this?
Oh yeah.
So it's not necessarily like when we say contract, it's not like a hard contract where you have to fulfill this time frame and they have to fulfill. Okay. So it's still at will employment basically.
Yeah. And I mean,
goes both ways. Terminated at any time too.
Yeah. I mean, like, I mean, I've had plenty of guys quit. Most would come up and give you that 2-week notice, which I appreciated because we had a bunch of the Serbs quit. They gave me the 2-week notice. They went over to the oil field gig in Iraq. Didn't work out. And what happened was they all wanted to come back. If they gave me that 2-week notice, I brought them back. If they didn't give me the 2-week notice, if they were like, I'm gone tomorrow, it's like, okay, they're gone. But then if it didn't work out, they wanted to come back. Nope. You're not coming back.
Yeah, you don't get to pick and choose like that.
Yeah, but if you gave me your 2 weeks and you did the right thing and you gave me work up until the day you left, I mean, and your next gig didn't work out, hey, I understand. It's business, man.
For sure.
Just come on back. I mean, I can always use a good driver. Come on back, and we bring him back in.
What would you recommend to someone that may be considering getting into contracting now?
Oh, first of all, it's way different. I would imagine it's way different than when me and Al were doing the game. So,
are you guys not connected to that world at all anymore? Because I know there's contracts overseas.
Really, I'm not. I mean, geez, yeah. I mean, once I left it. Geez, I think everybody I know that I worked with is out of it too.
I do a little bit of honest. I know that vetting has improved. Training has certainly improved. The WIPS program is what it's 47 days long now or whatnot. But then there are so many restrictions on contractors, and then the pay scale. When Ukraine kind of fired up, they were looking for medics anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a day. That was at the time such a convoluted situation, and you couldn't come in by air. You had to go in through Poland, and there was no really escape mechanism. Once you were there, you were on your own to get out. And I think that was the thing that kind of drove the pay scale up a little bit. But there have been a lot. And again, like any kind of field, it's dynamic. It's going to change with basically the response to the outcome of any kind of war or conflict.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I actually got a notice from someone sent me a notice that it was $2,000. I think it was starting at $2,000 a day to go to Ukraine for it was like, I think it was an evac contract. You'd be going in and pulling people out. It'd be like small teams going in and pulling out individuals that paid to get pulled out or whatever it was. But it was like the pay was high, and I was like, there was another job. Someone hit me up. I got contract offers for a couple years. For a few years actually after getting out. There was another gig that paid quite a bit, but they didn't tell me where the location was, and I was like, where's the location? And it was a place in Africa, and I was like, yeah, that's why the pay is so high. Like you're getting sent to a combat zone shithole, like a for real like shithole. So it wasn't really for me. When I got out of the military, it was an option I probably could have exercised as a JTAC. That's something that they're always kind of looking for. That's a specialty that's kind of in need, like being a medic or something. But for me, it was like, it would have defeated the purpose, because one of my main reasons of getting out was to get out and spend more time with my kid. I'd been in for 12 years and 5 deployments and all this, been gone a lot and everything. So that would have defeated the purpose there. But two, it was like, what's the end game? For contracting. Like when I got out, I'm in my 30s and I'm like, I gotta start a career or I gotta figure something out. I can't do contracting for 5 years and then decide to go start a career after that, because now I'm in my 40s and who's going to hire a 40 something year old, and the skills I'm bringing are all combat skills. You know what I'm saying? Like, and finding a real job. And I go, hey, I was a JTAC in the military, and then I was a private security contractor. what kind of jobs are out there for me. So I kind of made the decision. I'm like, I'm cold cutting. I'm not doing the reserves. I'm not doing any kind of contracting. I'm just going to go and move into the civilian sector and just be a, shitbag civilian for a while. And I maintain my sphere of military like stuff through the podcast and, keeping up that way. But
when I got out, it was basically seeing my kids raised in absentia. My wife was basically the disciplinarian because I was gone, and I don't know if my kids did things knowing that I wasn't there to kick their ass or something like that, but that took away from my family life,
For sure.
Oh yeah.
And then with Ed, his deal was that all this stuff kept getting worse for him. It was just like, went from one guy getting hurt to two guys getting hurt to a couple guys getting killed to five guys getting killed. You're playing you're rolling the dice now, and it's time to go home. So I'm before I go, because I got a jet. A lot of people think about the reason that we write this book is to try to make some kind of money. Well, there's no money in writing books, I can tell you.
No.
We want to honor the guys that we lost. That's the biggest thing. And there's a little bit of an underlying theme there, and we talk about brotherhood a lot. And then, of course, there's a storyline to it as well. And I think that people will really enjoy reading it. But I'll let Ed close with how he can get a hold of the book or whatever not. And Justin, whenever we get a chance to talk again, maybe in the future, I appreciate you having us on. And I just have to take off.
No, it's totally cool. I was getting ready to wrap up anyway. Yeah, because that echo will transfer over. Okay, so we're good now. Okay, so Alan's off. Ed, I really appreciate you coming on. For those that are watching, listening, the book is Postcards Through Hell. Where can they find that? Where can they find you on social media and support you?
All right, Postcards Through Hell, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Order it. And, please leave a review after you've read it. Social media, I'm on Instagram and on Twitter, LinkedIn, and also Facebook. On Facebook as Ed Ford, and also we've got the Pony Express page set up. That's an open. We have a closed group there for the actual guys that ran the roads, and a few select other people that we've invited in. And we've also got the Pony Express page, which is an open page. Feel free to join that. And once again, the book's available on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. I've started reading the book. I got it a couple days ago. I started reading the book. I've really enjoyed it. I hope people check it out. I think it's the contracting world is kind of still a gray area. Most people don't really understand or realize what was going on. So I like that you're bringing light, more topics. You're bringing to light more information about it and stuff like that. Both you and Alan. If that's it, man, people can check out my stuff at Former Action Guys, Former Action News on Instagram. My website's jkramergraphics.com. If you guys are looking for if anybody out there is looking for website audit, SEO, anything like that, I'm a digital marketing professional. Feel free to reach out to me. I can help you out with your Google rankings and stuff. And that's it, man. I really enjoyed the conversation.